Hello, everyone. Uh, I welcome everyone to this session. I just want to give some more minutes, people to join us, and we will start very shortly. Thank you for your patience. I can tell that this session is very crowded, and I hope that everybody can hear me very well. Good, 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 good. I think we can start because we don't have much time, and we have a very, very a special guest today, a presenter today. First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Balkasem Foura. I work for Saudi Aramco at the PMO office in charge of performance analysis. And today I'm honored and really honored to be the host of a very special guest that we have today, talking about on behalf of PMI KSA chapter. I want to thank all the team that they organized this webinar. I want to thank our guest and our presenter, Ms. Olfa Hamdi, and I want to thank you all the attendees and the expert and the community, project management community here in Saudi Arabia and all over the world. We have attendees today. A number is incredible. I've never seen a number as this one. And I welcome you all for all this session. And this is very, to be honest, this is, you need to record it. You need to make this date because this is a revolution presentation and the revolution topic that you're going to be talking about for the whole experience and life in project management. Without any waiting, I just want to introduce the presenter. And today's topic is advanced work packaging for construction capital project, which will be presented by Olfa Hamdi. Olfa Hamdi is an expert in project lifecycle integration for capital project and one of the pioneer of the advanced work packaging and work phase planning, which she will explain very soon in her presentation. She served as a key member in Construction Industry Institute, a joint venture within construction owners, such as for the Association of Alberta, COAA, research team, and which significantly expand the existing of model of work phase planning. Olfa as well was the primary research of the team, and she was the co-author of the CII and industry research implementation of the AWP called AR272. She documented through case studies and expert interviews the advanced work packages, benefits, and challenges as part of her academic research work. She's obviously the CEO and co-founder of the Concord Project Technology, a California-based company with a proven methodology for implementation of the AWP and workforce planning across owner, EPCs, and discipline contractor companies. I mean, the list is big, and we had the chance to work with her. Olfa, she's amazing. Without any additional and further, because I cannot represent her much, I want just to leave the mic to her and then step back. Just for the attendees, please note that if you have any question, we encourage you to use the Q&A. Record your messages or your or your questions, and we'll, at the end of the presentation, Alpha will have the pleasure and we will facilitate the answer if we can allow to have to respond to all your questions. Otherwise, we'll try to come up with an umbrella of the answers about the topic. Thank you, Alpha, and the mic is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Qasim. And I would like to start by thanking everybody who's attending today for your interest. I would like to thank the Project Management Institute, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia chapter for the invitation. And, on behalf of, Concord Project Technologies, Concord Academy, and the AWP Institute, the three organizations I'm representing today, I would like to just personally say that it is very important to continue the project management and the Project Management Institute communities like the one that you have in Saudi Arabia. And I'll tell you why. In 2014, actually, after I finished my thesis on advanced work packaging, and I was, getting started with the some of the implementations around AWP, I had a doubt, whether AWP would be of interest to the industry globally. So I knew a lot of corporations are already, working on it, especially the ones that funded my research. But I didn't know at the individual practitioner level, would AWP be of interest to them? Like, for example, the project management basic practices that everybody gets through. And I remember I actually presented the first time within the PMI community in 2014 in one of the online communities. And I had 1,000 people attend that webinar. And that was at the time where advanced work packaging, if you Google that, the only thing that comes up, at the time is paper packaging ads and companies. Nobody knew what advanced work packaging was. So that's when I actually made the decision that AWP has the potential for the capital projects industry to interest practitioners all over the world. And that's when I started my journey with the AWP Institute, found in Concord, because I believe that at the practitioner level, every single person would need to do that. So I would like to emphasize as much as possible the importance of these communities. And I really wish you guys a lot of success with the AWP, with the Project Management Institute Saudi chapter. So, I'm going to talk to you about AWP today, but, before doing that, I'd like to start with a quick safety moment. Safety is important to our industry, and we always need to think about that. In the period of COVID, actually, a lot of engineers and project management professionals and virtually everybody attending this webinar are working remotely. And we are what we call knowledge workers. So we are people who produce drawings, reports, knowledge, for us to be productive. And to produce that kind of work, we need what we call deep work. Deep work is basically the amount of time that you take to produce a deliverable that requires concentration, that requires you to be productive. And by doing everything virtually, by being in social distancing, in a context, not having that kind of maybe balance, the entertainment is not as usual. And we're doing a lot of virtual work. By being heavily in those, virtual environments, there is a higher and higher risk of mental health issues, especially for knowledge workers working behind the screen. So I would like to share with you some few tips so that you keep your balance and you remain healthy as a knowledge worker. One of them is to be mindful about your notifications, whether on your phone, on your computer. Sometimes some apps, they just send you notifications. You don't need to see them. They take space in your mind. They hurt your productivity, and it's just mentally tiring. You can actually, as engineers, for example, or PMs, or anybody that is at project controls people, etc. Sometimes it's good to block deep work time on your calendar and just be off meetings, and schedule that time. So that's might be helpful. And finally, a quick tip as part of the safety moment is to, every day is a new day when it comes to productivity. So if you have been unproductive today or the day before, just leave that behind and start again. So these are just few tips in terms of safety moment. Now, I wanted to get started about, why it is such a pleasure and why I believe in the importance of presenting this to the KSA PM community specifically. So the very first thing I wanted to share with you that you see in the screen here is, the performance of capital projects in the Middle East in comparison to the rest of the world. This is a study that was recently published by IPA, Independent Project Analysis, which is a company I worked with for a long time. It's a company that specializes in benchmarking around cost and schedule and, projects risks. So as you can see here, this slide here shows basically the execution schedule slip. So basically delays in terms of schedule, what we planned versus what we actually achieved over the years, for Middle Eastern projects in comparison to the rest of the world. I don't need to, emphasize this further. Projects in the Middle East tend to experience, more challenges when it comes to capital projects and when it comes to schedule slip. And that is why I believe it is, if there is a place in the world where AWP and predictability thinking is valid and is important, it would be in that part of the world, and especially in Saudi Arabia. And I'll tell you why specifically. In fact, if we look at the Saudi, industry, construction industry, and I'm sure you guys have more detailed information around this. I'm not here to lecture you about Saudi Arabia, by no means. But if we look at the total value of construction, there's about 160 billion, dollar USD worth of construction. And the one actually element that is so important is the fact that there are over 3 million workers in the construction industry. Now, what that tells me is that any positive change that could happen at a macro level in the construction industry in Saudi Arabia would have such positive repercussions on the capital projects industry across the region. So, I feel this is like, speaking to you, and thank you, Abdul Qadir, for mentioning, the historic side of things. Well, what's historic really about it is the fact that we have people here in this call that would be in a position to lead a positive change in the Middle Eastern capital projects landscape. Now, this takes me actually to the basis of, what AWP is and what's the whole, idea behind it. So I think about this, when you design a plan for a project, for a construction, without accounting for what we call constraints, and that's basically accounting for some of the earlier risks, the earlier issues, the earlier, those factors that do impact construction. That is exactly like you're planning to climb, Mountain Everest, for example, without accounting for the cold. Literally, failure is inevitable. And so that's where the whole word advanced comes in, the word advanced work packaging. The word advanced is meant for the process to describe thinking about constraints, thinking about risks, thinking about construction in a manner that is advanced in time, early on. Not just early on, but that in a manner that is advanced in terms of detail. So we're not planning construction just as a high level critical path milestone schedule. No, we're going into the deeper logic of construction. We're breaking down the project into areas based on the logic of construction, based on constraints, based on the constraints that come from procurement, from engineering, from construction, from the market conditions, from all sorts of elements, and describing that in a process that is formal. And so AWP, or Advanced Work Packaging, is a work process framework that is fundamentally based on the idea of thinking with the end in mind. It is designed to allow engineering planning to be driven by construction sequencing. I'll explain that more down in the presentation, but if there is one thing that I would say you would keep in mind when it comes to AWP, is that it is about breaking down the project, yes, but we all do that. Even when we built the pyramids, we broke down the pyramids into packages. That's not the innovation. The innovation is early on aligning engineering and virtually every single element of the project to the need of construction, to the construction plan. And so thinking with the end in mind in a way that is systematic. So I will cover actually in the next part of the presentation 3 questions. The first one is why AWP? I'll give you some history around it. How did it come to play? Why, the history is important because for AWP to become a best practice in the United States and Canada, so North America, and then to become actually global, there has been, over about, 15 to 20 years of experience and journey and research that led to that. And so in your region, when I explain to you the history on AWP, think about it in, the Saudi Arabia construction community. What are the elements you could build upon to make AWP also a standard in your region? And what can you do to lead it to there? The second question is, obviously, how the work is structured in AWP. So I'll talk to you exactly about the breakdown of the packages and the connection of the various elements around it. And then finally, the principles around AWP, because please keep this in mind, AWP is beyond the work breakdown structure. So it's a structure, yes, but it is a transformation that covers so many areas. And that's why it's a system, it's a framework. It's not just the creation of packages. So the number one thing that led to the development of advanced work packaging is the issue of construction productivity. So I'm sure, many of you might be familiar with this chart, but this is a chart around labor productivity in construction. This is, the United States market labor productivity. What's in construction is in red, and these are the other industries. So manufacturing, utilities, transportation, and things like that. As you can see, when it comes to labor productivity, other industries have seen, of course, at the macro level, some peaks around improvement of productivity. Manufacturing, for example, with the introduction of some of the, we know the major concepts around lean manufacturing, around automation, around the introduction of technology, production systems, et cetera, that have led to, at a macro level, to a peak in productivity. Other industries as well. For construction, we have tried so many things. And while we have improved safety, we have improved many other areas, we still struggle in the area of productivity, labor productivity. So how do we measure labor productivity in the AWP system? In the AWP system, measuring labor productivity is basically as simple as measuring how much of their time is spent on tools. So out of 8 hours a day, if you observe your labor, how much of their time is spent on tools. Why is this important? Because in construction projects, labor cost is the biggest line item, literally, in a construction project. Maybe, on average of 40% of construction costs would go to labor. And so when we have a loss of productivity in the field, in terms of on-tool time, that systematically translates into safety risks, but it also translates into schedule slip. It also translates into cost overrun. So, on average in the petrochemical industry specifically, we know that out of 8 hours a day, there is an average of 35% of the time is spent on tools by labor. The rest of the time is spent in time they're waiting, for example, for instructions or for material. They're moving equipment from one place to the other. They're just moving from one place to the other. 15% is just for crew movement. There is 14% for early quits. And the funny thing, though, is related to the fact that labor spends on average 11% of their time in planning, which is not what they're supposed to do. Their specialty is to actually install work, not plan it. And so that's kind of like some of the interesting facts around that. What I would like to invite you to do here for the KSA PM community here is to look at the construction industry and possibly even as a community, figure out a way to determine some of those benchmarks for your own construction sector. Where are we in terms of on-tool time and in the construction industry in Saudi Arabia, for example? And that would be very revealing about, some of those challenges. The second metric that we actually look at for AWP that we want to improve is the metric of supervision time. Supervision time is basically how much of the time the supervisor or the foreman in the field is spending supervising the crew. Now, we know it's only 15% on average. The rest of the time is, of course, divided between paperwork, traveling, safety meetings, of course, which are important, but also 20% of their time is spent planning. So why is it important to increase supervision time? Well, it's important because supervision time and the supervision rate correlates first and foremost with safety in the field. So that's number one. but it also correlates with quality, with better instructions, with more accurate installation. And so better operability, overall for the project. So achieving better business objectives. And so in a way, the reason AWP existed in the first place is to be able to improve those two factors, supervision time and on-tool time. And that led around, in Western Canada, primarily in some of the oil and gas projects there, that led to the development of what is called work phase planning, which is literally, as you can see here on the screen, picking your site and trying to divide it into small packages, which were called installation work packages, IWP. And basically adding, planners in the field. Their only job is to actually prepare these IWPs, give them to the crew, give them to the foreman, where the foreman doesn't have to do planning. The foreman doesn't have to think about those big packages. All they have to do is pick those packages from the field room and then go and install them with the labor and focus on supervision. When that happened, actually, there were a number of savings that happened in the field. There is this, for example, this case study here from Chevron, which is on a site in Nigeria specifically, which increased on-tool time from 37% to 47%. So with work phase planning, we started seeing 10% increase up to 25% increase actually in productivity for labor. And that's what triggered the overall work packaging practice and work phase planning, which led actually in 2006 for work phase planning to be declared as a best practice in Western Canada by the Construction Owners Association of Alberta. After that, there was this research study, and that's where I actually started getting involved with the AWP. When I was at the University of Texas at Austin, I worked with the Construction Industry Institute, and I was leading the research on academically speaking, on the advanced work packaging side of things. So I looked at work phase planning, and I looked at all of those issues that we have in the field, from recordable incidents, poor labor productivity, low direct supervision time, just basically unpredictable construction. And I'm like, for those projects that implemented work phase planning, why can't we see better improvement? Why, just 10% extra in labor on tool time, which is already great, right? But we still experience challenges. And that's, in that extensive study, when we correlated basically some of the issues in the field actually come from the office. So construction projects, for everybody, I'm sure all of you are familiar with this, but just for those who are from outside the industry, a project gets into construction. Before we get into construction, we actually go through a long period of time where we do early business development, the shaping process. Then we go through definition phase, and then we go through an engineering phase and a procurement phase. And then we start with the first foundation. By the time we start with the first foundation, there are so many issues that do impact construction. I'm citing here some of them. You have scope changes, execution changes, poor risk management, the fact that we develop engineering that is late or inaccurate, procurement that is late. We buy equipment that arrive late, we don't do them on time, the life cycle around them is not accurate, some of the vendor issues. We just plan the project poorly, with poor sequencing, and sometimes we end up with the project being planned based on the logic of engineering, not of the logic of construction. Obviously, we struggle with issues around high turnover, and actually there is a study by IPA that I actually worked on, which correlated that a major turnover in a position like a project manager or a lead engineer could correlate with up to 5% increase in total installed cost. Poor definition. So when we define the project in a way where we make so many assumptions just because we want to go fast, or we don't want to spend the resources to do the good definition, we end up with so many assumptions. And guess what? When we start construction, assumptions now are no longer assumptions. So we realize some of those issues, and we encounter those issues in the field. And then, of course, we struggle as well with inadequate staffing and lack of competencies. So sometimes we get people, especially right now with our industry having a hard time attracting new talent actually, and competing with other industries, with the IT industry, with everybody else. Sometimes we end up with people, in construction projects that, don't have the right competencies in place. So all of these issues basically, were shown to have an impact on the field. So that's what led basically to the definition of okay, let's look at within these earlier issues, what is the, the most important one? And that's the engineering performance. Now, today, we estimate that slip in engineering is approaching an average of 40% on projects large and small. Actually, IPA says that the most serious problem facing capital projects in the industry is timely and accurate engineering. And then if we look at the sources of field rework, if you look at this chart here on the right, the breakdown of field rework issues, part of it, majority of the sources is related to design errors, design changes, vendor errors, and so on. And so engineering is becoming more and more an issue in our industry globally. And that's what led to the whole definition, the whole development of the advanced work packaging, thinking with the end in mind. So let me take a moment and explain to you at a high level how, an AWP-based structure is. So I spoke to you about work phase planning. So take a look here at this red circle, which reflects the construction phase. And again, we're thinking with the end in mind, right? So let's think about construction first. The idea is that, and we have proved that, right? So we want to create packages in the field that are executable by labor in a way that they don't waste their time. They're spending most of their time on tools, and in a way that enables their supervisors actually to spend more of their time supervising and ensuring safe, quality, and timely installation in the field. These packages in construction are called installation work packages. So that's basically what we call the work phase planning side of things. Now, going back in time, earlier in time, how do we end up basically packaging the entire project so that we could deliver those IWPs? Well, after we set up the project, the very first thing we need to do in the AWP system is develop what we call a path of construction. A path of construction is an additional deliverable that is a formal deliverable in the AWP system, which is about breaking down the project into areas that are aligned with the logic of construction, but it is also about aligning the engineering schedule and the engineering team and the way the engineering is organized to the path of construction. It is about aligning the procurement and the expediting work with the path of construction. It is about including the operations and the commissioning, some of that feedback into the path of construction. It is about accounting for safety, scaffolding, all sorts of constraints that could impact labor market conditions and so on into the path of construction. So I can tell you from an AWP standpoint, a project that doesn't do this path of construction well is a project that I can't, if you look at that, you can tell this project is going to succeed or not. Once a path of construction is defined, the next step as we get into execution, we start detailed engineering here, is we produce two types of packages. We start with the first one, and that is an engineering work package, and I'll explain it further later on, which is then transformed into a construction work package. And I'll explain that as well later on. Subcontractors, they receive the CWPs and they break them down into IWPs, the installation work packages, and that's when the labor does their work. So the additional items into the structure within these traditional, project delivery system is these basically 4 deliverables: POCs, EWPs, CWPs, and IWPs. Of course, while we're defining all of this, again, the principle is that always we're thinking with the end in mind. And that's the logic of predictability that organizations need to transform into. And that's where the challenge around the implementations comes in. So just sharing with you some information around implementation evidence. Actually, CII conducted in 2016 a research collecting data around a number of projects, number of organizations through their maturities, and they look at some of the metrics around productivity, safety, quality. And I would like to highlight actually something that, which is a misconception. So people think that by implementing AWP, we will save time. No, that's not the case. By implementing AWP, you will achieve on-time delivery. That means you will develop a schedule that is accurate and you will achieve it on time. Because if you finish your project earlier than expected, that means your plan was not accurate in the first place. So that's the number one thing, of course, number one benefit around it, in addition to the other benefits. Now let's take a look at the structure in more detail. So in relationship to, I'm sure many of you are, come from, let's say, some of the industrial construction sites where we have this terminology around FID, or final investment decision, or this gate basically by which We know the project is a go, it's funded, we need to start execution basically. And, EPC contracts are awarded, etc. Well, AWP doesn't start there. AWP starts earlier. AWP starts when the owner and the feed contractor are coming together and defining the project. That's when you develop your plan. Once you start execution, it's like you started your car basically, or your engine. You can't change your engine. You can't, in a way, change pieces in your car engine when the engine is on, right? So that's the purpose around AWP. It's primarily what happens before, and then of course what happens after is the part of it. So the path of construction, as you can see here, it's basically, the simple way of defining it is the visual representation of the project scope in a number of areas, a number of silos that follows the sequence of construction, the logic of construction. So, in simple terms, you pick your plot plan, and collaboratively, through a rigorous process of input and constraint analysis, the team defines its areas and its boundaries and its logic of construction. And these areas become basically it's like your scope, right? They're frozen, everybody commits to them, everybody buys into them, and change in those areas is actually not even, it is not a good practice. So the idea is that the project is solid in that. So let's say we've defined those areas, right? So for example, here, in this model here, this is an area, a particular area in a project, right? And the boundaries around this area take into account, congestion in the field, take into account, for example, the sequence of installation. We want to install this tower, we want to change this foundation here. There's a compressor that's going to come into this place. And you guys, I'm using here a sample project from an industrial petrochemical environment. Please, this also applies to an infrastructure project. It applies to a data center. It applies to a water project. My company and we have been involved in so many types of projects and industries. The logic is the same, really. There are certain variations, but the logic is the same. So within this area in particular, the next step really is to define the single discipline inside the area. So for example, here, piping. Piping within this area 1, is the scope of your engineering work package. And so the engineering team would need to produce the package around the ISOs, the drawings, the study, basically, the foundation study, et cetera, the geotechnical study, et cetera. All of these elements, they need to be updated and developed and produced, respecting the boundaries in here. So if I have a pipe that crosses 2 areas, that doesn't matter. I still need to produce the drawing with respect to a connection point, respecting the boundary of the area. Why do we do that? Again, it's because we're doing this for the logic of construction. We're not doing this in the logic of the engineering. And I would like to emphasize here that one of the biggest challenges and the biggest changes to make this a success is to the engineering team. And I just don't like, that some people say, no, this doesn't require too much change. No, it does. And the engineering team, when the engineering team is on board and they respect these boundaries and they drive the definition of these packages, these engineering work packages, that's a success factor for the AWP implementation. Now, once we have that engineering work package defined, then we take that and we develop it into a construction work package. The construction work package is the very same engineering package, but we add to it construction related information around safety, scaffolding, labor, installation in the field, access, timing, all sorts of elements. So as you can see, we're basically in a granular way taking each package and making sure that that package is constraint free and is well planned. Once that package is defined, then it is actually given to the contractor or the discipline contractor, or whoever is leading that discipline, let's say piping. And as you can see here, it is broken down for packages that are maybe depending on the size of the project, on the nature of the project. But I've seen these packages take the form of between 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes max of 3 weeks worth of work. The recommendation is, within 2 weeks worth of work for a typical crew, as you can see here. So that's the structure, that's the work breakdown structure, which is identified and developed. The number structure around this actually becomes the logic of numbering around all deliverables in the project, whether a drawing, an ISO, a requisition, a schedule, Everywhere there is a numbering structure that reflects this breakdown that goes inside the entire project logic. Now, this takes me to the last section actually of this presentation, which is what's important, what are the principles around AWP beyond the structure? And unfortunately, I don't have the time to go through all of these here. I would like to invite you to go through more details. And there's we publish a lot of free information to educate the industry around this. But please know that these principles listed here are actually principles that do translate in a change. They translate in processes, they translate in technology, they translate in an organization, they translate actually in a change management and a transformation inside your organization. And these principles, they start with the end in mind, which is basically including construction-driven planning. What that means many things, including getting construction management expertise early on staffed into the project team. The other principle is construction-driven engineering. As a matter of fact, when you develop a path of construction and you haven't involved the engineering team and where they could actually say, this works, this doesn't work for us, that's not a good path of construction. So construction-driven engineering is a principle. Procurement alignment with the path of construction is also a principle. The logical construction-driven work breakdown structure, which is a breakdown structure that actually now is common, it's a skeleton that is common to every single person, every single deliverable produced into the project. That's a principle. Of course, construction leadership is a principle. So a lot of, mostly generally speaking, just construction people and construction leadership, in management and so on, they just don't like getting involved with the office unless they are given the right environment and the right framework and the right opportunity. So there is a conscious decision that needs to happen on how do we involve construction leadership in early stages. Of course, the owner engineering alignment on the engineering schedule is important. And here I would like to emphasize the importance to this process of project schedulers and project controls people. The schedule is not this, big thing, PS thing, P6 thing that, is so complicated that people don't navigate. In the AWP system, the schedule is at the heart of the implementation. And of course, there is the work phase planning, which is one of the principles, which is around enhancing field planning resources for field operations and managing constraints. So you might not want to call it work phase planning, or you want to call it work phase planning, but the importance is that you have the capacity in the field so that you take off planning of the hands of the labor and the first line supervision. These guys, their strength is being in the field and acting upon execution and providing the right instructions and supervising. Their strength is not actually planning. And then finally, and this is an important piece, which is the accountability-driven collaboration or the disciplined collaboration. And that's basically just a team that is well organized and where roles and responsibilities are clear. So if your project team doesn't use a RACI matrix, you can't have a solid, successful AWP implementation. So all of these are prerequisites to the AWP implementation. I'd like to put this into the context of actually a larger context, which is AWP at the center of it is about the standard language and acronyms and definitions, about the standard process, which is driven by obviously a certification process, which is just driven by a knowledge and a training process. And then in there is the larger context of the principles. And so the principles that I showed you, their application in the industry, their application in your organization, their application in your cultural context could vary, but the objective should be the same, which is achieving that principle. And of course, the context and the contracting strategy and the company and the type of project has an influence on how you incorporate the system. So I'd like to make sure that the standard is a standard, whether you're in Saudi or in the US or in Malaysia or in Indonesia or in South Africa, AWP principles and standard and definitions are the same. You get the same knowledge, the same training, the same way, with the PM book, basically. There is no project management for, Saudi Arabia or project management for that particular area of the world. No, it's a standard. But the implementation of it, the successful implementation of it, there is a configuration that would need to happen. So to summarize the steps, number 1, learn the system. Number 2, get buy-in inside your organization. Number 3, understand your context and plan it. Number 4, pilot, and then roll out. So that's my advice. Don't roll out right away. You need to go through these steps. This takes me to sharing with you some free information. My company, and I'm a believer in the power of every individual in our industry teaching themselves and learning, and then getting into the process of implementation. So there are free webinars available here in this link on the fundamentals, on the implementation scenarios, on the specific area, the EPC projects in the Middle East and the considerations around that. We have a white paper that it covers everything, the fundamentals around AWP. We have an online resource that is all about the definitions. You can find everything you need to know there. We have also, within the Concord Academy, we have developed a formal AWP and workplace planning certification process, which is all virtual, self-paced, which comes with certain prerequisites, certain curriculum, a certain rules, and it's a certification process. We're doing it with major organizations like Shell, for example. Shell will actually rolling it out globally with people from Samsung, for example. These are some of the companies we're working with on that. And the process here, the importance of the certification is to get people to actually know the fundamentals as capital project professionals before they implement it. I would like also to share with you that next year, the process actually with my team of producing a handbook on AWP, which covers everything. So you can study it on your own, and it would give you everything you know to implement AWP as well. So please subscribe to that. And that covers my presentation. I would like to open up to the questions right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Olfa, for your this wonderful presentation, actually, and very, very interesting and attractive. I would like to thank you for this straightforward presentation, and I think we have some question. If you don't mind, we're going to go ahead and take some of them, and then I have seen some people that they raised their hands. I think first comes first serve, right? So we will go through the first registered question, and then if the time allows us, then we go with the open mics questions. So the first question that we have, there is a question from Hajar, or we don't need to mention the name. Is path of construction in AWP is the same in project plan or not for non-construction industry? So,
okay. Well, the short answer is yes and no. So
I knew it.
So it is,
Sure.
yes, of course it is a plan, right? It is a plan that is then translated into a schedule. But the no part of that is that the plan is the outcome of the process. So the path of construction is a process which ends with the deliverable, that is the plan. And that process comes with interactive sessions, interactive planning sessions, the collection of constraints information, the analysis actually of some of the, the project scope, the project objectives, the trade-offs between cost and schedule. So there are so many things that feed into that process. And we call all of that the path of construction. And the deliverable is the project plan. It is also an actual Word document deliverable. So that describes, for example, the logic of construction. Why did you choose that? It includes a matrix basically that explains, each of the areas, what are the work packages in each area, and some of the, information associated with that. And
sure, which is actually a deliverable part of the project plan as such, right? And it's a piece of the project plan.
Yes, and it is a deliverable that becomes part of your feed package. So.
Absolutely, thank you. I hope that answers the question. There is another one which is more related to the applicability of the advanced work packages. Mohammed is saying AWP in this case will not be possible only on turnkey project where design and build is involved. I mean, he's making a statement, but maybe he's asking the way, is it applicable for turnkey project or only for design and build project? What type of project AWP is more suitable, if I may rephrase Mohammed question?
That's an excellent question. So the general answer, the short answer to that is that AWP is not, doesn't depend on the contracting strategy, okay? So the choice of the contracting strategy is not a reason on why, how to, on why to implement AWP or whether to implement AWP or not. But the contracting strategy has an influence on how you implement AWP. So for example, if the project is, let's say, EPC lump sum, and, the contractor that is doing the feed package, for example, early on is not the contractor that is doing the EPC work. That's a specific contracting strategy that, so when we implement AWP, the path of construction that is developed early on, let's say it was not, it was developed with certain considerations. When the EPC team takes over with the second contractor, it is very important that they update that path of construction and align it and get the owner buy-in right away. So that's just one example of when implementing, considering the contracting strategy, how does the contracting strategy impact that? Also, there is, the contracting strategy could impact the AWP implementation from, let's say, the way you monitor engineering, for example, or the way you, you align the interfaces. So I would say the contracting strategy definitely, and I've seen AWP implemented in many contracting setups. It's just when you implemented the contracting strategy could add additional interfaces and could add additional risk. And because there is additional risk, then we manage that part of the implementation.
Absolutely. So to ramp up, that means this is applicable for multiple contracting strategy, but the application will take another considerations in your planning or your implementation. Okay,
yes.
Thank you. We have another one. Does the AWP system is applicable or as effective in residential or commercial project? I think this is straightforward because I let you answer this.
Very good question. I can tell you AWP in industrial projects is proven, it is applicable, and it's, it's mature. In residential, specifically high-rise or, commercial projects, we have seen it. I mean, my company, for example, we have implemented it on a data center, some high-rise projects in California. We've made the adjustments. We've seen the benefits, but I cannot say that it is, the results are everywhere in the industry. I cannot generalize that because we don't have enough case studies to say that it impacts the entire industry. But in the industrial sector, yes, AWP is a proven best practice.
Fair enough, fair enough. That means that we don't have much database to speak on that on the case studies.
But I have a number of pilot
Good
projects that are ongoing. We have done them with, large owner, let's say IT companies like Facebook or, other, residential type of contractors. And we've seen the benefit, but it's not proven, so.
Sure, thank you. Let's take another one. How is AWP handling the interface issues?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So AWP,
all the questions are good, by the way.
Well, I'll tell you this. It's you guys. Hey, I worked before. I worked before with on the Sadara project. I worked with SABIC people, etc. You guys are smart, okay?
Sure,
so I knew that we're gonna have some really good questions today.
Not us, to be honest, as the attendees. We have very, I thank them. I really thank them for their interest, for their questions. This is very wonderful discussion, actually.
Well,
please go ahead.
Yeah, so interface. So think of AWP as like my professor actually used to say this. It's a wellness program. So what that means is that when you apply AWP, it highlights the issues in terms of project management that you had. And so if you have poor interface management practice inside your company, when you apply AWP, you will see that and you will feel that, because to succeed in AWP, you're going to need to manage interface as well. And so AWP is not by itself an interface management methodology, but in implementing it in the larger context of predictability, there is a certain maturity in project management practices, including interface management, that would need to happen. And so I would say interface management is a success practice, a success factor, but it's not a core component of AWP. It's an additional practice that you would need to have to succeed overall.
Sure.
And I'd like to actually close this question by saying, when a lot of companies, when they come to us and say, okay, I want to implement AWP, I don't say, look, don't jump right away into doing the implementation. You need to go through a number of steps, including figuring out through AWP some of the gaps you have in project management, whether in collaboration, whether in scheduling, project controls, interface management, information management, data management, all of these kind of things. Because AWP is going to require a number of certain level of maturity in some of these. And so you would need to upgrade in all of these areas in addition to AWP.
Yeah, thank you. I think I may add to this, the path of construction will take into consideration all the interfaces, right? Correct. If
Yes,
am I right
yeah.
on this part? Okay, good.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. I'm just catching up. The questions are coming. Let's continue. Does the AWP system provide transparency of work? This is
Sorry, can you say that again?
yeah. I mean, they're saying, does the AWP system provide transparency of work?
Oh yeah,
Maybe transparency he means by let's say good scheduling or good.
I
I
get
don't
it.
know.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I think I get I think so, what this person is asking about. So here's the thing, with AWP, the transparency comes from the fact that when a project is delivering drawings and getting ready and within the AWP system, at any point in time you can tell whether that project is late or not, and where is the problem. So that's the transparency. The transparency is that we know where is the issue, what is the block. And actually, there is more data around predictability. For example, generally speaking, in capital projects, projects that end late, actually, and over budget, if you ask a team by 50%, progress, you ask them whether they're late or not, and whether the project is over budget or not, they'll tell you no. By the time they finished 50% milestone, in the schedule, they still gonna tell you no.
Mm-hmm.
And that project will end up late anyway. Why? They're not lying.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not lying, it's just what the way the project is designed, the way we are at the 50% mark in the definition. When we say we're 20 or 30% engineering complete, doesn't tell me anything of how much construction I could do. If I say I'm 30% engineering complete, it could mean I could do 10% construction, and it could mean I could do 5% construction. Doesn't tell me anything. But if I say,
or zero.
or zero, right? But if I say that I, in the path of construction, I progressed, 20% in engineering work packages complete, in respecting the path of construction, I could translate that exactly on how much construction I could do and I could start. And so transparency-wise, AWP actually, yes, make it transparent, even when that transparency just shows, here are the issues. And I'll share the story actually.
Clear.
We were piloting on this AWP on a project, and there was the engineering team producing some of the drawings, and construction was scheduled actually 18 months from that moment in time. And at that moment in time, we knew, based on the AWP structure, that the delay in engineering on the design on a tower, that's going to lead to delay in construction 2 years from then, 18 months from that time. And so that's when we had the discussion with the vice president of the engineering company and the vice president of the owner company coming together and saying, look, if the engineering team continues this way, if we don't increase the staffing, if we don't get solve this issue right now, we're going to suffer in construction 18 months from now. That kind of discussion without AWP, you can't have that kind of discussion, because you can't tell, 2 years from now that we're going to have delay in construction. So that's the transparency, which is about really knowing the issues at a time where you could take action around them.
Interesting, Alpha. Okay, we have another question from Sarur concerning 15% time spending on supervision. Should a supervisor increase or decrease this percentage? What this number should be?
It should increase, of course. It should
Okay.
increase because the supervisors, I'll describe a little bit to her why it's important. When you have labor in the field, wherever, anywhere in the world, uh, labor could have issues with, for example, competency. Sometimes we have construction labor that are not well trained. We have construction labor that come from, let's say, from different countries. There are so many
Different
things,
background, yeah.
different backgrounds.
Mm.
Some of them, they just have a basic safety training, but they don't have other training. So supervision is an important piece in the construction business. We can't do, unless we put robots in the field, honestly, we can't do work without supervisors. And
I
so
think we will.
yeah, and that's the dilemma, right? We want to think,
Yeah.
we want to think of, like, people in the field like robots, but they're not. I mean, I've worked on projects where just because of the heat, people just go and have a nap in the middle of the day. They're people,
Yeah.
right? You can't,
Which is normal, yeah.
which is normal. So the best way to manage safe and productive construction in the field is to have supervisors that dedicate most of their time to doing that and to being there for the crew. That's the best way. It correlates with better safety and better productivity. And so that's why the objective is to increase the time of supervision rate. The 15%, we want to increase it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's clear. Okay, this is a question from my friend. According to PMI work package in the lowest element of WBS, that is considered in the industry for planning.
Yes.
Work packages is resource loaded, as you mentioned. How is construction work package different from standard work package that industry understands?
Yes. Very, very good question. So the work
You can
package.
tell he's a planner, huh?
Yeah, I can tell
You can
that.
tell this guy.
Yeah. And I can tell, he's a PMP as well, because I know the PM book like in detail. So I know the definition on,
Okay.
there is a small section in the PM book about work packaging, but it's basically, that specific element around work packaging. In his question, it's right. It's related to the standard definition is that the work package is that small element at the lower level of the planning hierarchy. Advanced work packaging covers that because that's the ultimate goal, right? We want to have that small package in the
Yeah.
field, right? But to get
Absolutely.
there, we need to have the logic of packages in a hierarchy from early on, from a high level going down to there. I actually would like to say this: work packaging in the field is garbage in, garbage out. If you have a bad plan, bad drawings, bad definition, you're gonna do work packages, you're gonna create poor packages. They're gonna be late, they're gonna have issues. It's not gonna solve your issues in the field. It will solve it to a certain extent, but not everything. So that's why we went through the process over the years to actually build in this work packaging structure that goes from the high level, so the area level, then to the discipline level, then to the actual field work package level, and we connect that with the overall, of course, planning structure.
Yeah, it's a framework. It's not about the package itself. I think it's the framework.
Yeah, and the package itself is important, of course. I mean, the package, we have a lot of information around, like, how do you create it? What should it include? How do you monitor the life cycle of a package? That's all in there. But it's, logically speaking, from a project control standpoint, from a planning standpoint, it's the hierarchy of the entire project, from early on, from the high level, the area, the plant level, the program level, to the field level.
Thank you, Alfa. There's a question which you already covered in the presentation, but I'm going to mention it as well very quickly. How do we start a workforce planning in our organization? Do we start with education, buying a software tool, hiring special skills? Thank you. I mean, the answer is clear to me, but let's clarify to the attendees.
Okay, so workforce planning specifically, especially if you're a contractor company or you're an EPC company and so on, the number one thing I would say for every organization to start with is you pick a number of people inside your company and you train them on workforce planning. And these people would be, let's say, a group of 10 or 15 or so. And these people would be tasked to make sure and help develop basically your workforce planning practice so that it could roll out inside your company, right? So start basically in a two-step process. Number one, training for those people, and then customization and configuration, and then roll out to everybody, all of the planners inside the company. That's my short answer to
Sure.
that.
Okay. Okay, let's take some, I don't know about the timing, but we are just on time and we still have like 20 questions to go. Let's see. It's very interesting. I'm very excited to read those questions. What are the biggest obstacle you expect to face in process of implementing AWP within the construction field, especially in North Africa and Middle East?
Okay. Okay. Oh, very good question. Well,
Yeah.
well, that area is so special to my heart. So I would say, in my mind, there are no challenges. But no,
You would be biased, right?
I'm biased in that regard. But I'm gonna put that
I know,
aside,
I know,
emotional
I
piece
know, I know.
aside, and just talk objectively speaking. So the number one challenge when it comes to implementing work-phase planning specifically, not AWP, so work-phase planning, and that's about field and the construction side. The number one challenge is actually having the buy-in from inside the leadership and in the company that planning is important, and so you need to invest in it. Because a lot of people think that having a team of planners in the field, that's an extra cost, and so they say, why am I spending more money? Is it going to correlate to savings down the road? And that's that logic, that culture of saying I'm investing so that I could save in improve productivity, so that I could save down the road. That equation, I'm just gonna say it. I'm part of the region. I know we're not very good at that. We don't think in proactive manners. So that's number one challenge. Number two challenge is actually implementing work-phase planning without training people. So people basically, they receive this as like, now I have to do it, but they're not convinced why. And so they resist, right? So you would have supervisors in the field, they don't respect work packages, or they go to the warehouse and they get material to do installation, and now the scheduler and the planner, they're not aware that that's happening. And so
As they used to be.
exactly,
Yeah.
as to be. And so my advice, please don't take into for granted people's buy-in. It's unfair to ask people to pilot something new or try something new when they don't understand why. And so the why comes from training. So please train your people as a first step so that you increase the chance that people buy into this. And we've done this with Shell, for example, before they roll out the entire AWP work-phase planning actually on a upstream, offshore platform. They trained everybody from the PMs to the CMs to the foremen to the supervisors to the schedulers on the fundamentals. And what that developed is that at the end, everybody was like, okay, I'm convinced now. I understand this process. If the work-phase planner calls me and asks me, where is that status of that work package? I'm not going to give them, fake information, or I'm not going to answer their call, or I'll collaborate because I understand the importance of it. So please train your people. That's the number one thing. And I would like to say on this part, I understand the differences region-wise, especially, the nature of the labor market. That's a challenge. The conditions in which we do construction, of course. But I've seen so many pilots, so many projects globally. I think we all share the same thing. We all share the same challenges. It's just some variations. There is no such thing as, this region cannot, is different, or no. I mean,
because of the booming, because because of the challenges, as you mentioned, from a labor perspective and so forth.
But
that is, we lack resources. True.
Yeah, and doing it right. Planning the process, training the people. Don't take people for granted. Every single level in the construction organization, from the project manager to the foreman in the field, the first supervision line, all of them are. It's important to tell them why they are doing this, and that's how you succeed. And I believe success could happen in every region. I've seen it happen. I've seen EPC organizations, for example, in Egypt, develop this from and adopt this, with a decision coming from the CEO to the people in the field. So, and I've seen that success happen faster than companies in the US. So it's really there is the region is important, but it's not that important, honestly. It's really how
Sure.
your company and your community takes the approach to that.
Thank you. My question is, do we have 10 minutes more from your time, or we should close the session? Because we do have too many questions that are coming. I browse through them. They are all interesting, but I don't know your schedule. I don't want to disturb your schedule. How many time
Well,
we have?
well, Bilqasem, because you asked me, I can't say no. So, you know.
I know, but okay, let's take another question then. Okay, does the
Five more
AWP
minutes.
system?
Let's take 5 more
Okay,
minutes.
5 more minutes. Okay, we do apologize for the others that we are not able to take their question. This is very interesting topic for sure. Your questions are very valuable, and we do appreciate your attendees, your questions. We will try to find a way how to come up with an answer, but please just ensure that you register to the you have actually the email from Olfa, and her team can help you as well to answer this question. I'm just offering this service on your behalf, Olfa, and
Okay.
then go and subscribe to this tconglobal.com. You'd have many resources there where you won't be lost. I mean, you would have all the answers that are required. For the time being, I think we're gonna take just one more question before the closure. Just we don't want to take more from time. We know that you're very busy, and this is your duty now. You're in US, and it's different schedule. So let's take another one, which is since I took already a question from Mohammed Hilal, I'm taking from another guy because we answered Mohammed Hilal question before. I think so. I hope I'm not mistaken. Um, okay. What make AWP specific for construction only and not for other industries?
Yeah, very good
This is the
question.
last question. Yeah.
Okay, very, very good question. And I actually, when I first started with AWP, one of the things I did was work with people from the IT industry that are very well, versed into the agile project management processes, into the whole Scrum, agile type of methodology. There is the other methodologies around the lean construction and lean management in general, with the last planner system, all of these elements.
And
And
there are questions similar to this, huh?
yeah, yeah.
Same in the same topic. I can see. Yeah. Okay.
And then
Please
of
go ahead.
course, just the general project management practices that are obviously conveyed into the PMI system. So, what I would like to say is AWP is the inception of it and the definition of it came from the fact that these other, my apologies, everybody. The inception of AWP came from the fact that these other methodologies, they help, but they don't give us answers in capital projects specifically. So if you graduate from a university as a mechanical engineer or a chemical engineer or something, you don't know how a capital project organization is happen. You don't know what a stage gate system is. You don't know what's a work package, an engineering work package is. You don't know. And if you learn agile and lean and all of that, it doesn't prepare you to actually be successful project team member, in a capital project environment. And so that's why AWP was developed and came to play, because these other methodologies, they help, they give us the right foundation, but they don't answer the specific case on capital projects. My sense, and this is my own, obviously, opinion, professional opinion, is that AWP is, the principle of it could be applied elsewhere, but I'm not advocating that AWP could be, should be used in other, industries, whether, developing a software piece or, anything like that. I don't think so. I think AWP is for construction driven projects. It's specific to construction. It came from construction. It is meant to drive predictable construction delivery.
Sure.
And so I don't think AWP should or is in a position to become a sort of a standard for all types of projects. I don't think so.
Okay. Basically, we are more pragmatic, saying that whatever we are presenting today is just related to case studies and researches from your side and from CII and from IP as well.
No,
And
no, I'm actually saying
yeah,
AWP is a standard for construction, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not a
absolutely,
standard outside of construction. You know,
absolutely. Okay,
that's like software development projects, let's say, human resources related projects, program management, maintenance projects, things like that. Shutdown
sure.
projects, no, but it's non-shutdown, I guess, construction capital projects across all types of industries. Yeah.
This is, I think, the end.
Okay.
I encourage everybody to go to Concord Academy and try to have more resources there. As well, I encourage everybody, all attendees, to visit the CII website. They have a lot of material there as well. Just Google AWP Advanced Work Packaging. You have the Advanced Work Package Institute. I thank you, Olfa, for your time. I think we covered most of the questions. A lot of questions to go, but I know that for the time, we unfortunately not we are not be able to cover the entire questions. I think thank you all the uh, PMI KSA chapter for this support, and I leave the last word to you.
Well, I would like to thank everybody, of course, for the great questions, for your attention, and for the invitation. And I just, want to say that the capital projects industry, the construction industry, has one of the, smartest, most hardworking people across all industries. We're the kind of people that wake up very early, basically. We start our day early. So, I think, learning around AWP and thinking about how to improve each industry, wherever you are, for example, in Saudi Arabia, how to improve the Saudi construction industry, how to improve its competitiveness and the competitiveness of your companies globally, because you're in competition with other companies, whether contractor wise, owner wise, etc. That kind of thinking can come from the project management community. That comes from the project management people inside the company. So there is that leadership side of things for the project management community that I think goes beyond just developing, of course, the control side of things. I encourage you to keep learning. I encourage you to reach out. As I said, my company will have a publication that goes every single week, so please subscribe, with new information, new resources, free information about AWP and capital project predictability in general. And my final word is that, again, thank you so much for the invitation. It is my extreme pleasure to have been part of this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Olfa. Thank you, community. And see you next time. Inshallah. Thank you for your participation. This was a great, great session.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.